Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching my videos. So I recently was recommended, well actually a long time ago to be completely honest with you, to read this book. It's called I Do Not Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. And anyways, a lot of great information. I just started it. And what my goal is to actually do a chapter by chapter summary with you guys and myself for this book. So I have my notes here. Let me just go over what the plan is, and I'm going to jump right into this. So my goal with this is that we would learn together, number one. Number two, that these chapter summaries would be massively meaningful to each of us. Number three, that they would be highly impactful to you and to me in a positive way, so that it'd be highly impactful to both of us, and that it would encourage you along in your walk with God, or it would encourage you to be open to a reality that God exists. So anyways, before we go anywhere, let me just say this, and this is actually a direct quote from the book, and that's, quote, "We have acknowledged that evidence alone cannot convince someone to become a Christian. Some atheists and non-Christians may reject Christianity not because that evidence is inadequate, but because they don't want to accept it. Some people choose to suppress the truth rather than live by it. In fact, we humans have a fatal tendency to try and adjust the truth to fit our desires rather than adjusting our desires to fit the truth." So all that to say, I'm not here to convert you or convince you. I'm just here to help us both walk through this really great information and insightful information, and then we could come to our own conclusions, right? So anyways, let's go ahead and kick it off here. These are my main takeaways from, actually it's the introduction, not chapter one, rather the introduction. There was so much good information there, and I want to go ahead and go over that. So again, this is gonna be a section by section summary. The high level, I'm gonna take out the top 20% that I really thought was insightful and that I thought would be helpful to myself to remember, and also to share with you guys some really good content around this. So anyways, the author opens up with, where's the camera lens? I think I'm looking here at the right camera lens, so hopefully I'm not looking elsewhere. I believe it's right there. The camera's kind of far away today. So anyways, the author opens up with 5 of the most consequential questions in life. And these are, number 1, origin, where did we come from? Number 2, identity, who are we? Number 3, meaning, why are we here? Number 4, morality, how should we live? And number 5, destiny, where are we going? So here's another quote. "To answer each question depends on the existence of God. If God exists, then there's ultimate meaning and purpose to your life. If there's a real purpose to life, then there's a real right and wrong way to live it. Choices you make now not only affect you here, but will affect you in eternity. On the other hand, if there is no God, then your life ultimately means nothing. Since there is no enduring purpose to life, there's no right or wrong way to live it, and it doesn't matter how you live or what you believe, your destiny is dust." You're like, wow, Leland, thank you for the massive encouragement this morning. So we're going deep in this video, guys. We're going deep in this series, just a fair warning. So for me, ultimately, what I got from that is that everything we do, we live, we have our being on this planet, our purpose, our identity, our everything, right, hinges on what we believe about God or a lack thereof. Now, this next section, not chapter 1, this next section opens up that there's 3 major religious worldviews. Number 1 is theism, which is Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Number 2 is pantheism, which is Zen, Buddhism, Hinduism, New Age. And then number 3 is atheism, which is religious humanism. So here's another quote from the book. "Despite its apparent persuasiveness, the claim that religion is simply a matter of faith is nothing more than a modern myth. It's just not true. While religion certainly requires faith, religion is not only about faith. Facts are also central to all religions because all religious worldviews, including atheism, make truth claims, and many of those truth claims can be evaluated through scientific and historical investigation. For example, theists, Christians, Muslims, Jews, say that the universe had a beginning, while many atheists and pantheists, New Agers and Hindus, say that it did not. The universe is eternal. These are mutually exclusive claims. They can't both be right. Either the universe had a beginning or it did not. By investigating the nature and history of the universe, we can reasonably conclude that one view is right and the other wrong. Here, and then the author goes on to say this: the alleged resurrection of Christ presents another example. Christians claim that Jesus rose from the dead, while Muslims say that Jesus never even died. So again, one of these views is right and the other wrong. So how can we know which one is right and the other wrong? By evaluating each of these conflicting truth claims against the historical evidence. So notice that not only do Notice that not only do religions attempt to answer these questions, but scientists also have something to say about these matters. That is, science and religion often address the same questions, right? Where did the universe come from? Where did life come from? Are miracles possible? And so on. So in other words, science and religion are not mutually exclusive categories as some have suggested. So certainly not all religious claims are open to scientific or historical investigation. Some are unverifiable dogma. Nevertheless, the validity of many religious beliefs can be checked out. Some beliefs are reasonable, they can be proven with a high degree of certainty, while others are clearly unreasonable. End quote. So, that was a long quote. But what I really love about the author's point here is that religion is not just about faith, it's also about facts, right? And the neat thing is that many religious worldviews can be verified through scientific and historic evidence, which I thought is super cool. And I also love how he mentions how science and religion are not separate, because we all know from growing up and reading science books, right? Science tries to answer these 5 questions, right? Identity, purpose, and so on. Am I a monkey? Am I not a monkey, right? Did I come from some random puddle of soup billions of light years ago somewhere in somewhere in Alaska? I have no idea. But these are just the things that we've read, right, in middle school, depending on your generation and things like that, right? So again, they're not exclusive. They're actually kind of trying to answer the same questions in that sense. So anyways, now the author goes on to talk about the problems with Christianity. You ready for this? So the author goes on to say, is Christianity reasonable? We believe it is. However, unless one makes a thorough investigation of the evidence with an open mind, belief in Christianity may appear to be problematic. So the author goes on to say, number one, first, there are many perceived intellectual objections like those mentioned above. This was another part in the book, the problem of evil and the objections of many scientists. Number two, there are emotional obstacles, right? Number two, there's emotional obstacles that sometimes obstruct the acceptance of Christianity. Christian exclusivism, the doctrine of hell, and the hypocrisy of Christians are emotional roadblocks to just about everyone. In fact, hypocrisy in the church probably repels more people than any other factor. Someone once said that the biggest problem with Christianity is Christians, right? Last, there's volitional reasons to reject Christianity, namely Christian morality, which seems to restrict our choices in life. Since most of us don't want to answer to anyone, yielding our freedom to an unseen God is something we naturally is not something we naturally want to do, right? We just don't want to do it. So yet, despite these intellectual, emotional, and volitional obstacles, we submit that it's not faith in Christianity that's difficult, but faith in atheism or any other religion. That is, once one looks at the evidence, we think that it takes more faith to be a non-Christian than it does to be a Christian. This may seem counterintuitive, but it's very simply rooted in the fact that every religious worldview requires faith, even the worldview that says there is no God. The quote continues, why? Because we have a limited Because as limited human beings, we do not possess this type of knowledge that will provide us with absolute proof of God's existence or non-existence. Outside of the knowledge of our own existence, I know I exist because I have to exist in order to ponder the question. We deal in the realm of probability. Whatever we've concluded about the existence of God, it's also possible that the opposite conclusion is true. In fact, it's possible that our conclusions in this book are wrong, the author says. We don't think they are because we have good evidence to support them. Next page. So instead, we think our conclusions are true beyond a reasonable doubt. This type of certainty says that 95+% certain is the best that fallible and finite human beings can attain for most questions, and it is more than sufficient for even the biggest decisions in life. Nevertheless, some faith is required to overcome the possibility that we are wrong. That was a lot to say. So, in summary, in that point, I believe the author's point here is dealing with the principles of logic and how coming to conclusions that are beyond a reasonable doubt, So after I looked up this term, it's actually a legal term used in court. Very interesting concept. It's more of a concept than a definition. So we're gonna go grocery shopping, right? Let's say we're gonna go to the grocery store, we're gonna buy a box of Lucky Charms. That is our goal. We want some cereal, we ran out, I want some Lucky Charms, right? So now when we go to the store, we may not know we're doing this subconsciously or consciously, but we are conducting a bit of a factual analysis whenever we buy something from the store, right? So if it's Lucky Charms, we look at the logo, we look at the box, we see the branding on there, we shake the box, you see all the other boxes of Lucky Charms, lined up behind there, and the box looks good. Now, is it possible that scrap metal is in that box? Well, it is possible, right? Now, a jury member should never have 100% confidence a defendant is guilty, and that's not the standard. The reason for this is that only a witness who has first-hand knowledge should have 100% confidence. So back to the grocery store, right? The only way you're gonna have 100% confidence that there's Lucky Charms in that is if you open the box and look at it. But that's not the standard. Based on the analysis and seeing everything on the box, then most of us will conclude that there's Lucky Charms in that box beyond a reasonable doubt. So in summary, in that point, it takes a lot to wrap my head around that concept. I had to really read that a few times, but I think I get it, right? So bottom line, beyond a reasonable doubt is a concept used in court to convict criminals or to let them go. If there are some questionable doubts and they are reasonable, then they are guilty. If there are some doubts they are guilty, but they are unreasonable, and there's more evidence that support he's innocent, then they are innocent beyond a reasonable doubt. So let's go ahead and move on. Deep concept, let's move on here. So some concluding thoughts to the intro the author states are the following. Quote, the question is who has more evidence for their conclusion? Which conclusion is more reasonable? As we look at the evidence, the atheist has to muster a lot more faith than the Christian. And then he goes into some examples of what he'll cover in the book, which we will not talk about. We'll go into that throughout this video series. Again, quote, if someone could provide reasonable answers to the most significant questions and objections you have about Christianity, reasonable to the point that Christianity seems true beyond a reasonable doubt, would you then become a Christian? Think about that for a moment. If your honest answer is no, then your resistance to Christianity is either emotional or volitional, not merely intellectual. No amount of evidence will convince you because evidence is not what's in your way, you are. In the end, only you know if you are truly open to the evidence for Christianity. So finally for this video, I will end with this. And this is one of the last paragraphs that he goes into on the introduction. Here it is. Quote, one beauty of God's creation is this. If you're willing to accept Christianity, then you're free to reject it. The freedom to make choices, even the freedom to reject truth, is what makes us moral creatures and enables each of us to choose our ultimate destiny. This really hits at the heart of why we exist at all and why God might not be as overt in revealing himself to us as some would like. For if the Bible is true, then God has provided each of us with the opportunity to make an eternal choice to accept him or reject him. And in order to ensure that our choice is truly free, he puts us in an environment that is filled with the evidence of his existence. But without his direct presence, a presence so powerful it could overwhelm our freedom and thus negate our ability to reject him. In other words, God has provided enough evidence in this life to convince anyone willing to believe, yet he has also left some ambiguity so as not to compel the unwilling. In this way, God gives us the opportunity to either love him or reject him without violating our freedom. In fact, the purpose of this life is to make that choice freely and without coercion. For love, by definition, must be freely given. It cannot be coerced. Wow! So that is the end of the first video. So again, really good start, lots of good information, but I believe this was the best of the intro, kind of the top 20% taken out of that chapter that I wanted to share with you. So anyways, lots to think about. I hope you got a little piece of nugget of value out of that. And again, looking forward to connect with you guys on the upcoming videos. So let's do it. Again, the book is called I Do Not Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. Thanks so much for watching. Talk to you soon. Bye.